our public safety, as our town has been working hard to use every tool at our disposal to mitigate the devastating effects of climate change. The climate crisis is causing tremendous harm to our community's health and well-being. Duke Energy Corporation has known about the grave dangers of its dirty energy choices for decades, and yet the corporation has increased its reliance on coal and gas for electricity, is building new gas-burning power plants as we speak, and helped lead a nationwide campaign of deception and convincing the public that their goals are environmentally friendly. Duke Energy Corporation has profited greatly while our community has suffered the consequences and paid for climate damages. For 50 years, top-tier executives at Duke Energy Corporation have misled all of us, and they continue to mislead us about the harms to our climate and to our health from the use of fossil fuels. This deception reminds me of cigarette makers and the dangers of tobacco usage. Tobacco companies misled the public for decades about the risk of smoking and only stopped their campaign of deception and paid for the damages they caused because they were forced to. The damages in this case are all around us, and they will only get worse. We just experienced the hottest summer on record. As global warming accelerates, the heat will only get worse for all of us. Our electricity bills will continue to climb to cool our homes, businesses, and town buildings. Heat is the top weather-related cause of death in this country, killing more people than hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods combined. The town of Carrboro has experienced multiple flooding events, tropical storms, and major heat waves in recent years, and has spent millions of dollars to rebuild and maintain roads, stormwater infrastructure, and other important community needs. We've been tracking damages from climate change, and it's clear that our town and hardworking taxpayers cannot and should not be forced to pay for this. The Carrboro community deserves a safe and healthy climate, not the crisis that Duke Energy Corporation's fossil fuels continue to cause. Here in Carrboro, we have been squarely focused on mitigating climate change through the implementation of several climate action plans. Climate change mitigation is woven into everything that we do in Carrboro, including being one of the pillars for our Carrboro Connects comprehensive plan. Yes, it is that important. The climate crisis is here, and we are in an urgent fight for the future of this planet, and the window is closing. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change warns us that we have about 6 years left to cut greenhouse gas emissions in half to prevent the worst effects of catastrophic global warming. Scientists also tell us clearly that global warming is caused by the emissions that come from burning fossil fuels. Duke Energy Corporation's decades-long pattern of deception has delayed the critical transition from fossil fuels to smarter, cleaner, renewable energy. The town of Carrboro is seeking compensation for past and future damages incurred by the town because of Duke Energy Corporation's extensive, widespread practice of deception to deny the harms from climate change. We want Duke Energy Corporation to be held accountable for the damages to human lives and town property as a result of this deceptive conduct. In this moment where we see corporate interest and fossil fuel corporations dominate the many actions of many nations, we are using the power of state law to fight the climate crisis and environmental injustice. We can't afford to wait any longer to beat the most critical crisis of our era. Thank you so much. And now I would like to introduce Mayor Pro Tem Danny Now.
Thank you, Mayor Foushee. I could not be more proud of Carrboro for standing up to Duke Energy and doing our part to end the era of corporate deception that has brought us to this moment of climate crisis. For far too long, corporations like Duke Energy have prioritized their executives' personal fortunes at the expense of our communities, our planet, and our collective well-being. I have 2 young children, and one of the main reasons I started my journey of public service is to give my children an answer to the questions they will inevitably have for me as they come to be more aware of the world that they are inheriting. Today, my colleagues and my neighbors have given my children an answer that they can be proud of. Carrboro has never been the kind of community to tolerate injustice, nor have we ever been afraid of exploring new solutions to difficult problems. One of the most difficult problems that every human on our planet faces is how the incentives of corporate profits continue to drive us toward a climate crisis we are only beginning to come to grasp with. Increased severe weather threats are bringing storms like Hurricane Helene, which devastated our state, leaving us with hundreds of millions of dollars of damages and human suffering that will endure for generations. If we are going to meet this moment with the urgency that it requires, corporations like Duke Energy must be made to reinvest their ill-gotten gains into the communities that they have deceived. We face new costs and challenges as we design climate-resilient communities, prepared for rising temperatures and increased severe weather events. The reality is that Carrboro residents have paid for this work many times over. For decades, our residents have been allowed to believe they were paying a corporation that promised a cleaner, more sustainable future. In fact, because of the monopoly Duke Energy enjoys in our region, North Carolinians have had no choice but to trust and depend on Duke. As they led a nationwide climate deception, denial, and greenwashing campaign using industry trade groups and phony scientists, Duke Energy execs continued to expand their burning of the fossil fuels that they knew as early as the 1960s were changing our environment irrevocably. And because of their monopoly, North Carolinians had no choice but to trust their deceptions. Our trust has been violated, and we have paid for it. We have paid for excess road repairs. We have faced the effects of stormwater, and we will continue to pay for even further expenses as we uncover them. Today, we stand up, and we say that it's time for Carrboro to be repaid so that we can put the resources we've already spent to work, designing a climate-resilient community and put an end to the corporate deception that threatens my children and all of our futures. I would like to introduce my colleague, Councilmember Randy Haven O'Donnell.
Thank you, Danny. Good afternoon. Since the 1970s, Carrboro has recognized and honored the relationship between our climate and sound environmental decision-making. With today's lawsuit against Duke Energy, one of the largest global polluters, Carrboro is making a sound environmental decision for its future, for future generations, and for the future of the planet. The Carrboro community has worked hard to protect, conserve, and preserve the environment, our beautiful natural surroundings, the ecosystems we all depend on, and the well-being of our citizens. As a science educator, a community representative, I have experienced Carrboro's enduring commitment to climate and environmental protection, resilience, and justice. The Duke Energy lawsuit is important to Carrboro because we've been working hard and in earnest to protect our climate, and the giant utility has been deceiving us. Duke Energy's deceptive public information campaign has been working against us, erasing the progress we've urgently been striving to make to address climate change. Carrboro is the little engine that could. We can be the change. We are the change. That's why, starting with this lawsuit, we are holding Duke Energy accountable. For more than 50 years, Duke Energy leaders have been aware that fossil fuel causes climate change. Duke Energy denied the science, misled and misinformed the public, opposing renewable and clean energy solutions and delaying transition away from fossil fuels. Duke Energy's deception hasn't just harmed North Carolina and Carrboro. It has harmed the country and the world. We were led by Duke Energy to be skeptical and question genuine climate science. Duke Energy knowingly engaged a public campaign suppressing evidence of the harms caused by fossil fuels emissions. We were led to believe that this giant energy utility would be a leader in new and renewable energy. Duke Energy misleadingly presented an environmentally responsible image. Duke Energy greenwashed and influenced trusted environmental groups, funding projects that deluded the public into thinking it would advance renewable energy resources and foster climate change resilience. We were encouraged to believe Duke Energy would be an authentic partner, supporting electrification and solar power, mitigating the burden, suffering, and cumulative harm by burning fossil fuels. Every level of Carrboro governance is centered on the climate crisis and climate justice. Carrboro partnered with Solarize Carrboro and Solarize the Triangle in a regional initiative supporting renewable energy. Carrboro created a home and business weatherization and energy efficiency loan program to reduce energy bills, especially for our low-income and small businesses. Carrboro established a stormwater utility and enterprise fund to manage more frequent and intense storms driven by the climate change, which has taken its toll on stormwater infrastructure, maintenance, and repair. Carrboro is committed to reducing carbon emissions 50% by 2025 and 80% by 2030. This goal translates directly into action within Carrboro community, as shown with the Green Neighborhood Grant Program. Through a Green Neighborhood Grant composting program, residents have avoided generating 2,972 pounds of methane, the equivalent of nearly 75,000 pounds of carbon dioxide. Community members and Duke Energy ratepayers are angry that they've worked hard to protect our environment and reduce emissions, only to see their utility costs rise as the utility continues to invest billions of dollars into new plants that burn methane gas and expand the use of fossil fuels. Carrboro is small, but mighty. And in the face of climate emergency and the need for urgent action, we are taking a stand. We want to model the way for other towns bearing the same burdens and damages from fossil fuel-driven climate change and decades of corporate climate deception. We are the little engine that could, and we hope other towns can be, too, and hold their deceptive and polluting utilities accountable. In Carrboro, we're standing up to be the change we want to see in the world. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Jim Warren, Executive Director of nonprofit NC Warren. We are honored to be assisting with this case, and we applaud the leaders of the town of Carrboro. And thanks to the Center for Biological Diversity, too. It's great to be allied with people sharing the common goal of climate justice, protecting, helping people and wildlife in the face of reckless corporate behavior. And that's especially when the U.S. and other rich nations are totally failing their duty on the climate crisis. So it's vital to directly challenge the corporations that the head of the United Nations calls the godfathers of climate chaos. That includes Duke Energy, one of the world's worst climate polluters for many years, as our lawsuit today explains. As you've heard, we all hope this lawsuit can help the many communities down East North Carolina, in the mountains around the world that have been hurt already by climate disasters. As the lawsuit shows, it was Duke Energy's top bosses that are the culprits. They used denial, confusion, greenwashing. They even claimed global warming is good for us. They did all this to keep their profits rolling along. Later, they began pretending Duke Energy is actually a clean energy leader. This is all a calculated corporate deception and is causing a massive amount of misery. In fact, this nationwide conspiracy is like the tobacco scandal on steroids. So much damage. As the lawsuit shows, Duke's leaders didn't just go along with this nationwide scandal, they've been ringleaders of it since the beginning. And amazingly, Duke's bosses keep expanding the use of fossil fuels, expanding methane, a disastrous move according to climate scientists. In fact, Duke Energy plans to add more fracked gas power plants than any other utility in the nation, despite the growing misery. And despite all the solar panels you see in their slick ads, Duke leaders keep suppressing rooftop and larger scale renewables. Finally, this global crisis is anchored largely here in Charlotte, North Carolina, just down the road. And we need the judicial system to hold the leaders of Duke Energy, the leaders of the company, accountable, and to finally break their corporate control over our political system and our future. Again, major applause for the town of Carrboro, North Carolina.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jean Sue, and I am the Energy Justice Director and a senior attorney with the Center for Biological Diversity. I'll be really honest with you today. We are facing a dangerous climate precipice. Right now, just this year alone, Carrboro, the state of North Carolina, and countless communities across this country have been pummeled by record-breaking heat, and then in the winter, absolutely devastated by the fatal Hurricane Helene and other storms. Right now, we know that this is a huge problem, and we know the actual consequences of climate change. Yet the federal government is taking us in the exact opposite direction to fight it. In just a month, we will have a new White House head who is a climate denier in chief. He has appointed a cabinet full of corporate frackers and other oil and gas cronies. And to top it all off, the administration has vowed to squeeze every last drop of oil and gas from our precious public lands and waters. But let's be clear why we're here today. We all know that real climate action does not start nor end at the federal government level. Carrboro is living proof of that fact, that real climate action starts at the local level today. This is a historic and incredible day. Carrboro is taking its steps to bring and has brought the first ever lawsuit against an electric utility in this country for climate deception. And this is not any normal electric utility. This is the Goliath of the electric utility industry, which, as we've heard, is the third largest corporate polluter in this country and one of the largest utilities in this world. We are proud to stand in solidarity and strength with Carrboro, who is the very real-life David in this situation, challenging with this incredible slingshot of a lawsuit, the Goliath of Duke Energy. Carrboro is the light in this climate darkness right now and shows all of us that right now, local government and Carrboro is where climate action starts. Thank you.
Hey, it's me again, Mayor Fouché. So we are at the question and answer portion of the press conference. And what I am asking is for credential reporters to please raise your hand if you want to ask a question and make your way to the podium. Once you get there, please say your name and what press group that you're with. And so they're pointing to where you should go. Right now, I also realize that there are potentially questions online. Are there any questions in the room right now?
Thanks. Is this on? Cool. I'm Chase. I report for Indie Week over in Durham, and we're also partnering with Floodlight News today. I know this $60 million figure has been mentioned, but is it possible to get a specific cost to the town for a specific climate adaptation that you've had to undertake already?
So you mentioned $60 million. Ask the second part of your question again. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Is there a specific cost for a already undertaken adaptation that the town has had to make because of climate?
Oh, so you're asking for money that has already been spent.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, you might want to take that up, Matthew, because you might have that answer. So Matthew Quinn, attorney of record. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I appreciate the question. My name is Matthew Quinn. I'm a lawyer at Lewis and Roberts. I'm the lawyer for Carrboro. I'm very proud to be the lawyer for Carrboro in this matter. So there has been a comment in the media about how Carrboro's damages are many million dollars, could be upwards of $60 million or more. And that's based on modeling, which is being conducted in a lot of these climate deception civil actions. Modeling, which looks at where we were at back when we could have made a big difference on the climate crisis. And as a result of the deceptions by Duke, fossil fuel companies, others in the industry, we didn't make that transition to renewable energy when we reasonably should have and when we could have. And as a result, there's a major gulf between where we should be at and where we're at right now. And there are models that are used by experts in this field that can look at the expenses and the damages that people like the town of Carrboro have had to have incurred because of that difference between where we're at now versus had people like Duke, companies like Duke done what they should have, where we would be. And so I hope that answers your question, but basically you can analyze the gulf between where we should be and where we are, and you can figure out what Carrboro's damages are based on that. And there are a lot of different buckets of those damages that have been mentioned by the mayor and other speakers this afternoon.
Thank you.
And then I have a follow-up also from our partners at Floodlight. Has the town explored breaking away from Duke Energy and or forming its own utility that would run off of green energy?
No, we have not explored that option.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi there, I'm Liz McLaughlin, a climate change reporter for WRAL. I also have two questions. First, the lawsuit doesn't seek to force, Duke Energy to convert to renewable energy. Can you explain why the focus here is on financial compensation?
If you would like to, I mean, hey.
Again, Matthew Quinn, I'm a lawyer for Carrboro, and I also appreciate that question. This case is about Carrboro and the damages that the town of Carrboro and Carrboro's citizens have suffered because of climate deceptions, the additional roadway expenses, energy costs, stormwater measures that have had to be implemented. That's what this case is about, the damages to the town and the citizens. And we'd like to keep the focus on that. Now, it's possible that if Duke Energy sees the damage that it's done, maybe there will be policy changes, but we are going to concentrate on Carrboro and what's happened to its citizens and what's happened to the town.
And can you also just expand on what motivated Carrboro to take this legal action now, and what you hope to see, not just for this community, but maybe others impacted by climate change?
I'm going to turn that question over to the mayor. We're going to play musical chairs.
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. And so the motivation for Carrboro is pretty simple. So when I think about righting wrongs or seeking justice, somebody has to step out and do that. Somebody has to be the voice, and someone has to take the action. And so here we stand today doing just that. Other questions in the room? I see you.
Hey, Brittany, Tom George from ABC 11. Just wanted to kind of, ask from kind of a legal standpoint, as you mentioned, this is kind of unprecedented. Obviously, other states have also, filed similar lawsuits. But, what are we hoping to see from the courts, and how is this going to be quantified? Obviously, as you mentioned, damage over years and years, whether roads or infrastructures. What are some of the, what goes into that from a legal standpoint as the court will look at this?
Matthew Quinn, attorney for
Yeah. And also, I appreciate that question as well. So this is a unique new civil action, a historic civil action, I should say, because Carrboro is the first governmental entity to file a civil action against an electric utility for climate deception. So this is historic, and in that sense, it's unprecedented. But we all know the old phrase, there's nothing new under the sun, right? These climate deception civil actions have been filed against fossil fuel companies by many other states, counties, municipalities across the country, and they're moving forward. So we're highly confident. The facts support what we're doing. The law supports it. Most importantly, justice supports it. And so this case is going to move forward on that basis.
Adam Wagner from the News and Observer. I have a couple questions. First of all, following up on Chase's question, is the $60 million number the best number, or is there a better number for what Carrboro has already spent? And Mayor Fouché, I think you mentioned that Carrboro has been calculating costs.
Yeah, so what I am aware of is we have been tracking costs for, I would say, the last 4 years or so, using a modeling system that other communities have used. So that much I do know, but I would have Mr. Quinn to come up to add more context to that answer.
Thank you. So I appreciate the question about what the town of Carrboro's damages are. This is something that we have already conducted a substantial investigation on. In that investigation, the excellent work that the town of Carrboro has done in the past to track its own damages was extremely important. Also shows how committed that the town of Carrboro is to mitigating any impacts that it can have to the climate crisis and to reducing its emissions. However, beyond that, we are now in active litigation, and so we're not going to go into the details behind those figures at this time.
So that model isn't available as an exhibit or anything like that?
Not at this time, no, but it will be at the appropriate time.
And then for the town, I'm wondering, one, if there really was kind of a breaking point where these conversations started, and then maybe, like, where did it start? Did it start with the town? Did it start with NC Warren, Center for Biological Diversity? Kind of how did we get here?
So from the town council's perspective, these conversations started last year. We started to receive information from various nonprofits, gathering resources, and the council was really engaged around this matter. But by the time more information came around, I became the mayor. and several council seats changed over. But what was good about all that was the council did not lose focus and they remained highly engaged around this matter. So this has been going on for a little bit over a year, and it brings us to today.
Thank you.
Hi, Sonika Barga from CBS 17. I have two questions. First, you've referenced some not quite the same but similar lawsuits that have been filed in other states. There's been a push back against those lawsuits to say these need to be dealt with in federal court and to stop them from proceeding. Is that a concern that the town has regarding their own lawsuit?
Matthew Quinn, attorney of record. He probably is.
Everybody always laughs at the lawyer. So no, that's not a concern that we have. This civil action belongs in Orange County. It belongs in the courts of the state of North Carolina. That's the way it's pled. It's based on state-based, North Carolina-based tort law, and it belongs in this court, in the Orange County Superior Court. And we expect that at the end of the day, that's where it's going to stay, and that's where a jury of our peers will hear it.
And then just a second question. We've talked a lot about the damages and the money that Carrboro has already spent, but is there a hope that potential compensation rewarded could also go towards furthering the town's own projects towards mitigating climate change?
Well, we are going to ask a jury to award whatever a jury in Orange County feels to be fair and reasonable. That's what we're going to end up asking for. So to the extent that's compensable, then perhaps, but we're not going to comment more on the legal minutia about that right now that we're in litigation.
I'll go again unless anyone else wants.
Can you hold for 1 second?
Sure.
Is there somebody can we or would you prefer to do all those at the end? Because this will be a repeat question.
Why don't we
the
go ahead and
ending.
take our online questions?
Okay.
If that's okay.
Just hang on 1 second.
Thank you.
Okay, this is a question from Lisa Sorg, a North Carolina reporter with Inside Climate News. She has one for the town. If Carrboro recovers damages, how will it use them for more climate-reliant community, or what are the priorities? And I think that was similar to a question that you just had.
Right. And so what I would say from the town's perspective, if we do receive any monies from this lawsuit, I do believe that the Carrboro Town Council, as well as town staff, will work to determine where best to utilize that money.
And Lisa has a question for Jim. Lisa asks, how does Duke's carbon plan and delaying the decarbonization benchmarks affect the climate crisis?
Well, Duke Energy has what we call a pro-carbon plan in North Carolina, and what they have done so far is making the climate crisis worse year after year after year. Again, they are expanding the use of fracked gas more than any other utility in the nation. They are suppressing rooftop scale solar, large scale solar even. They are business as usual, and they are, again, one of the worst polluting actors in the world. Was there a second part, or?
That's it.
Okay.
And then we've got a question from Michelle Alfini for the group. Michelle's at WSOC, I believe. Would you be open to any other co-plaintiffs joining the suit? And if not, there are other cities who have similar complaints, and what action would you recommend that they take?
So I can only speak for the town of Carrboro. I really can't speak to what other towns or municipalities would do or would not do. And I think that was the second part of the question. What was the first?
If other cities have similar complaints, what action would you recommend they take? But I think you pretty much answered that.
Okay, well, there it is.
And then one more from Brighton McConnell, WCHL and Chapel Borough. The town explored potential litigation against the EPA regarding the cogeneration plan on Cameron Avenue a few years ago. How did that experience or play into how the town is approaching this litigation? Was anything learned about the town's reach and impact from that exploration?
And this is about the cogeneration plant at UNC.
On Cameron Avenue.
Right. And so I think I would believe that I would want to just stick to what we're discussing here today about the lawsuit with the town of Carrboro being the plaintiff, Duke Energy Corporation, the defendant. Yep.
Those are the questions online.
Thank you. I think we can go back to the gentleman, Chase.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Be real familiar with you by the time this is over.
Yeah, Chase from Indy again. I think for people who know Carrboro, this action makes a lot of sense. But this is already getting some national attention with notes like, small North Carolina town in a pretty nondescript way. For people who may not be as aware of Carrboro's history or culture, could you draw some more of those connections for us? Like if you were to just explain to someone why Carrboro is doing this.
And so I did talk about this. I think I mentioned it a little bit earlier when I talked about righting wrongs and facing injustices head on. And it doesn't matter who does it. But what I will say about the community where I serve as mayor, along with my colleagues, is bold action is like our middle name. We move in boldness. We move very intentionally around issues that we care about and about issues that we know our community cares about. And so what's happening today, it is another tool in our toolbox to specifically bring more engagement around the urgency of the climate crisis. Councilmember Haven O'Donnell, she spoke specifically to several things that the town of Carrboro is engaged in: implementation of climate plans, climate change being one of the pillars of our comprehensive plan, and many, many other things. So this is just another tool in our toolbox. We are a bold council. We believe in action, and we're here today to speak truth to power and put our money where our mouth is.
We have two more online.
Chase, you were.
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
All right, you're welcome.
Mayor, I think these might be for Mr. Quinn. Leslie Clark at E&E asks, who's paying for the legal fees to bring the lawsuit?
Not our tax.
Yeah, thank you. So the town of Carrboro and its taxpayers are not paying the legal fees or the litigation expenses for this case. The legal fees and the litigation expenses are being borne by NC Warren. NC Warren has been an environmental advocate in this state for many decades. NC Warren cares passionately about the issues that are that the taxpayers in the town of Carrboro care about, especially the climate crisis. And so it was a fit that made a lot of sense for these organizations that believe the same things.
And Michelle has a clarifying question. Are you open to co-plaintiffs, or is this suit going to be solely about Carrboro? I think.
We are what I care about and what the town cares about is the town of Carrboro and its taxpayers and its citizens. We can't speak for what others may or may not do.
Okay, I think we've covered online.
One more question from WREL, if possible. How are you funding this lawsuit?
Oh, he just said it.
But can you just go into detail about where that money is coming from?
Yeah, so it's not being funded by taxpayers. The legal fees are being covered by a nonprofit. So, and there's been just minimal staff time to gather information. So, and the biggest part of the lawsuit, as far as paying someone, would be the legal fees, and those are being covered by a nonprofit.
Just one more quick question from AUC 11. You alluded to this earlier about the incoming administration and also at the state level with some of the bills that may restrict the state attorney general's power to file these kinds of suits. Was that part of the reason that you thought it was important to do at a municipal level?
I believe I will call up Mr. Matthew Quinn. Okay. It sounds a little bit legal, but certainly. You heard the information that came forth about the incoming administration. And so what I will say as a mayor of this municipality, I will say again that we will use every tool at our disposal. And so then we start looking at, how to utilize state law and also local elected officials being on the front lines and just trying to figure out ways to mitigate this urgent climate crisis. So I will say that as the mayor of this municipality. Did you want to say something else?
That covered. Thank you.
Really, one last.
You're okay. You're familiar too. What's your name again?
Adam Wagner from the
Hi, Wagner.
This might be for Randy. This might be for you.
Okay.
But How has Duke's energy mix and kind of the future of Duke's energy mix impacted Carrboro's ability to hit those greenhouse gas reduction goals?
Well, let's put it this way. The Community Climate Action Plan and the Carrboro Comprehensive Plan both have a great deal of support within the community. And so, on a ground level, on an authentic base level with community members, over the last 50 years, community members have been hard at work doing what they felt best to be environmental and climate stewards. And it becomes a zero sum when they're working their hardest and they see that in one quick action of use of methane or expanding methane gas, their efforts are erased. And that has a huge impact on the way our citizens feel about the direction of Duke Energy's programs and being ratepayers. So it's really important for us to stand for our community and say, enough is enough.
So this marks the end of our press conference this afternoon. If there are further questions, please feel free to reach out. We will be around and we will definitely be available if you need clarity on anything you've heard here today or have more questions. Please feel free to reach out. I would now like to bring to the microphone our town manager, Patrice Toney.
Thank you, Mayor. As the mayor pointed out, let's give the mayor and this council a round of applause for their boldness in this fight. This is a historic day, and I am so proud to be the town manager of Carrboro today. So this officially concludes our press conference. If you have additional questions, please visit our website for the press statement. There are contact people on there, www.carrboro.nc.gov. And you can click on the Climate Action Lawsuit tab. You'll see 3 contact people. Feel free to give us a call or email for additional questions that you may have. The mayor and council will be available shortly for a few questions after we take a picture, so don't leave. But please respect their time. And like I said, you can always submit additional questions via the website. All right. Thank you.
Recording stopped.